At 29 years old, Eliza Wren stood with nothing left but $12 sewn into the hem of her worn traveling skirt after her uncle declared her an unwanted burden and turned her away from the only home she had ever known. And with those few coins, she did something every sensible soul in the little frontier town of Ash Hollow insisted was foolish beyond reason. Purchasing an abandoned granary on the forgotten edge of the valley for every cent she possessed, though its roof sagged beneath years of wind and snow, its walls leaned like an old man too tired to stand, and not a kernel of grain had rested inside it for nearly 2 decades. Yet hidden somewhere within its silent timber frame, something long sealed away had waded through dust, darkness, and passing generations. Something that would not merely alter the course of one lonely woman's life, but quietly restore hope to an entire community that had almost forgotten how to trust tomorrow. Settle in and let us tell you the story of Eliza Wren. If you're watching from a place others have forgotten, tell us where you're listening from in the comments, because forgotten places often hold the strongest hearts. We first meet Eliza long before hardship carved its patient lines across her face, when the valley still echoed with the laughter of harvest festivals and wagons creaked beneath hills of golden wheat, for she had been born during one of those generous autumns, when every field shimmered beneath warm afternoon light, and every farmer believed next year would somehow be even kinder than the last. Her father, Nathaniel Wren, never measured wealth by coins resting inside a lockbox, but by whether every neighbor's table held enough bread before winter settled across the prairie. He often reminded his daughter that a harvest truly belonged to everyone, because no single pair of hands could command the rain, persuade the sun, or soften the soil alone. Her mother, Miriam, stitched clothes, baked dark rye loaves whose fragrance drifted across neighboring farms, and possessed the quiet habit of placing an extra plate upon the table each evening, because strangers sometimes appeared with empty stomachs and tired horses. We watched Eliza grow among weathered fences, creaking mills, and fields where every season carried its own lesson. Spring taught patience because seeds disappeared into darkness before life emerged. Summer taught endurance beneath relentless heat. Autumn rewarded diligence, while winter reminded every family that generosity stored during abundance often mattered more than abundance itself. Her parents spoke little about success, but endlessly about usefulness. They believed a person should leave every place slightly kinder than they had found it. Nathaniel often repaired broken wagon wheels without asking payment. Miriam mended quilts belonging to widows who could not repay her except with thankful smiles. Eliza absorbed these habits without noticing they had become part of her character. She learned to recognize the sound of healthy grain simply by letting a handful slip through her fingers. She could judge approaching rain from the scent carried across dry grass. She knew how to replace warped floorboards, sharpen rusted tools, and patch roofs before storms widened every small weakness into expensive ruin. One autumn afternoon, her father guided her toward the largest granary in the neighboring county. The great grain chute towered above them, its wooden shaft polished smooth by decades of wheat pouring downward toward waiting wagons. Nathaniel rested one weathered hand upon the timber. "A granary," he quietly told her, "isn't built to impress travelers. It's built to protect tomorrow." She remembered those words long after she buried him. Illness arrived one bitter winter that refused to loosen its grip. Miriam weakened first. Nathaniel followed before spring thaw softened the frozen earth. Their small farm, burdened by unpaid debts accumulated through failed harvests and medicine purchased too late, passed into the hands of distant creditors. Eliza, barely 20, carried only family keepsakes to her Uncle Gideon's larger property several miles east. Gideon accepted her because appearances demanded it, rather than affection encouraged it. His own harvests prospered, but prosperity had narrowed rather than enlarged his heart. He counted every candle burned, every biscuit eaten, every minute another pair of hands rested instead of worked. Eliza rose before sunrise, milked cattle, repaired fences, tended gardens, and balanced household ledgers with careful precision, Yet gratitude never crossed Gideon's lips. His wife had died years earlier, leaving bitterness to settle permanently across the house, like dust upon forgotten shelves. Still, Eliza refused to surrender the values planted during childhood. She secretly delivered baskets of vegetables to elderly neighbors. She repaired children's boots after evening chores ended. She believed usefulness required no audience. Years drifted quietly onward until drought found Ash Hollow. The first dry season worried farmers. The second frightened them. The third broke them. Creeks shrank into cracked ribbons of mud. Wheat heads formed thin and empty. Wind carried more dust than birdsong. Families abandoned homesteads one wagon at a time, chasing rumors of greener territories farther west or north. Empty houses stared across neglected fields, while weather slowly reclaimed porches where laughter once gathered. Gideon survived longer than most because he had accumulated larger reserves, yet hardship hardened him further. Every neighbor seeking assistance met locked doors and colder words. He sold grain at impossible prices, while children elsewhere skipped meals. People remembered. When a distant railroad company announced plans to bypass Ash Hollow entirely because declining harvests made the valley economically unimportant, hope itself seemed packed into departing wagons. Then came the argument that finally cast Eliza away. She had discovered Gideon secretly withholding sacks of seed grain promised to struggling families through the church relief committee. Rather than distribute them honestly, he intended waiting until desperation deepened before selling them at 3 times their value. Eliza confronted him quietly. He answered loudly. He accused her of theft before hired workers and neighbors alike. He declared she had become another hungry mouth expecting charity. He threw her mother's cedar chest into the yard. He ordered her never to return. By sunset, she possessed only the clothes she wore, a blanket, several family letters, and $12 carefully hidden within her skirt. Ash Hollow pitied her, but offered little because almost nobody possessed enough for themselves. For 3 days, she walked dusty roads, searching abandoned properties someone might sell cheaply enough for $12. Every decent building cost many times more. Every affordable structure had already collapsed. Until she reached the forgotten northern ridge. There stood the old Mercer granary. Once it had stored thousands upon thousands of bushels gathered from farms across the valley. Before the railroad changed routes decades earlier, wagons had lined the road waiting their turn beneath its grain chute. But after a fire destroyed neighboring warehouses and newer storage facilities appeared elsewhere, the Mercer granary emptied forever. Children claimed ghosts wandered inside. Adults claimed snakes. Nobody claimed value. The aging land agent laughed openly when Eliza asked its price. $12, he shrugged, because no fool has offered 11. She counted every coin into his palm. The papers changed hands. By evening, she owned the loneliest building in Ash Hollow. Townsfolk shook their heads. Some pitied her. Others smiled politely while whispering she had purchased wind, splinters, and disappointment. The first night she slept beneath the leaking roof, listening to boards complain beneath every passing breeze. Moonlight filtered through broken shingles and silvered drifting dust. Yet despite exhaustion, she felt strangely peaceful. Nobody could order her away again. Morning revealed endless work. She swept years of dirt, removed collapsed beams, cleared nests from rafters, hammered loose planks, sorted rusted tools abandoned by forgotten workers. The old grain chute fascinated her most. Unlike the rest of the building, its heavy wooden casing remained unusually solid. Though empty, someone long ago had reinforced its interior with hardwood uncommon for ordinary construction. Curious, Eliza tapped along its length while cleaning. One section answered differently. Not hollow, not solid, hidden. She fetched a pry bar found beneath rotten sacks. The timber refused. Iron nails, blackened by age, clung stubbornly. Hours passed. Finally, one narrow board loosened enough to reveal darkness beyond. Expecting little more than trapped mice, Eliza reached carefully inside. Her fingers touched cloth. She withdrew a weathered canvas bundle wrapped in oilskin. Within rested a small brass key attached to faded ribbon, a folded map drawn by steady hands, and one sealed letter addressed simply, "To the first honest keeper of this granary." Dust floated through afternoon light as silence settled around her. She broke the brittle wax. The handwriting belonged to Amos Mercer, the builder whose family name still lingered across forgotten deeds, though no descendants remained nearby. His words carried neither urgency nor fear, but remarkable hope. He explained that during the valley's greatest years, dishonest investors had attempted purchasing every independent farm through manipulated debts. Rather than surrender generations of honest labor to distant speculators, several farming families quietly created a cooperative trust. They pooled savings, land agreements, water rights, and legal documents proving community ownership over thousands of fertile acres surrounding Ash Hollow. Fearing corruption, Amos concealed every original record where greedy men would never think searching. Inside the granary. Specifically, beneath its grain chute. The brass key unlocked the final chamber. The map showed where. Eliza's hands trembled. She followed the map to the chute's stone foundation, where loose flagstones formed an almost invisible square beneath accumulated dirt. Digging carefully, she uncovered an iron hatch sealed beneath compacted earth. The key fit perfectly. With slow effort, she lifted the hatch. Cool air breathed upward, carrying the scent of dry cedar rather than decay. Stone steps descended into darkness. Lantern in hand, Eliza entered. The chamber below measured little larger than a pantry, yet cedar shelves lined every wall. Metal boxes rested neatly arranged exactly where Amos Mercer had promised. Inside waited leather-bound ledgers. Survey maps, original property deeds, water agreements, letters signed by nearly every founding family in Ash Hollow, and one final document, the charter of the Ash Hollow Cooperative Reserve. Its purpose astonished her. Any profits generated through designated valley lands belonged forever to community improvements. Schools, wells, roads, seed banks, medical care, provided ownership remained under honest local stewardship. If corruption ever destroyed the trust, the documents instructed the granary's lawful owner to restore it. Not inherit it. Restore it. Eliza understood immediately. This was never hidden treasure. It was hidden responsibility. She carried nothing home except copies she painstakingly made by lamplight. The originals remained protected below. Word nevertheless spread. Curiosity always outruns silence in small towns. When Gideon heard whispers about papers discovered beneath the old granary, he visited wearing a smile softer than Eliza remembered. He congratulated her purchase, suggested family reconciliation, mentioned lawyers, offered generous partnerships. She politely declined every proposal. Soon others arrived. Some believed buried gold surely existed. Others insisted forgotten railroad claims hid nearby. A traveling businessman attempted purchasing the granary for $500. Eliza refused. Her refusal convinced many something enormously valuable remained hidden. They became correct, though not in the manner imagined. When county officials examined the documents, excitement quickly tangled with resistance. Several influential landholders, including Gideon, had expanded property lines during years when original records supposedly disappeared. If the cooperative charter proved authentic, hundreds of disputed acres rightfully belonged under community stewardship instead of private speculation. Lawyers argued. Surveyors measured. Old witnesses remembered conversations their parents once shared. Dust-covered signatures matched courthouse archives. Bit by bit, truth gathered strength. Yet powerful men rarely surrender comfortable advantages willingly. Gideon publicly accused Eliza of forging documents. He hired attorneys from the nearest city. Newspapers questioned whether a solitary woman possessed sufficient understanding to interpret legal history. Meetings grew heated. Neighbors divided. Some feared reopening old claims would destroy what little stability remained. Others believed justice delayed remained justice worth pursuing. Throughout every accusation, Eliza never raised her voice. She simply produced another ledger, another map, another letter. Truth required patience. Winter arrived before judgment. Snow softened abandoned fields while legal proceedings continued. Eliza transformed the granary meanwhile. Instead of waiting helplessly, she repaired its roof completely. Volunteers gradually joined after witnessing her determination. Carpenters donated spare lumber. Blacksmiths forged new hinges. Widows prepared meals. Children carried water. Without anyone announcing it aloud, the forgotten granary slowly became Ash Hollow's gathering place once more. People who had barely spoken for years now worked side by side. The building seemed to remember its purpose, not storing grain, storing hope. Spring finally brought the county hearing. Every bench overflowed. Farmers removed hats respectfully. Women clasped weathered hands. Eliza placed Amos Mercer's original charter upon the judge's table, together with decades of supporting records. Experts examined ink, paper, seals, signatures. Nothing contradicted authenticity. At sunset, the ruling arrived. The cooperative trust remained legally valid. Disputed lands returned under community stewardship, exactly as intended. Income from leases and future harvests would establish a public seed reserve, repair irrigation systems, reopen the abandoned schoolhouse, and maintain roads connecting isolated farms. The Mercer Granary became permanent headquarters for the restored trust. Its lawful owner, Eliza Wren, accepted the unpaid role of steward, not owner in spirit. Caretaker. Quiet applause filled the courtroom. No cheers. Only relief. Outside, Gideon watched families congratulate the niece he had discarded. Nobody mocked him. Nobody shouted. Children simply ran past toward Eliza without noticing him. Sometimes the deepest judgment arrives through being quietly left behind, while goodness continues without us. The following years changed Ash Hollow slowly rather than magically. The restored water agreements financed new wells. Young families returned. Fields once abandoned shimmered golden again. The school bell rang after years of silence. Travelers stopped, not because rumors promised riches, but because the valley once again promised honest opportunity. Every autumn, the granary filled with grain contributed voluntarily toward community reserves. Its chute carried harvest exactly as Nathaniel Wren had once described, protecting tomorrow. Visitors often asked Eliza why she never sold the documents or claimed vast personal wealth from the restored lands. She answered with gentle certainty. Some things become smaller the moment we own them. Instead, she lived inside modest rooms built beside the granary, tending records, welcoming newcomers, settling disagreements, and ensuring every decision honored the charter hidden for generations beneath timber and stone. Children loved hearing the story. They imagined buried treasure. Eliza smiled but always corrected them. The treasure, she said, was people remembering they belonged to one another. Years later, when silver quietly threaded her hair, travelers found it difficult believing anyone had once laughed at the lonely woman purchasing a collapsing granary for $12. Yet the valley never forgot. Every harvest festival included one tradition. The youngest child scattered the season's first handful of grain through the restored chute before anyone else. Not because grain required blessing, because memory did. We began by telling you about a woman of 29, cast into uncertainty with $12 and nowhere left to belong, and we end with that same woman standing where thousands gathered willingly each autumn, no longer because she possessed wealth beyond measure, but because she reminded an entire community that value often hides beneath the dust everyone else refuses to brush aside. Eliza Wren never searched for greatness. She searched only for honest work and one quiet place where nobody could tell her she had no purpose. In doing so, she uncovered a beginning that generations before her had carefully protected for someone exactly like her. Not the strongest, not the richest, not the loudest, but the first honest keeper, willing to place tomorrow ahead of herself. The old granary remained weathered, its beams still marked by storms and passing seasons, because restoration never required pretending the years had been easy. Instead, every scar became part of its testimony. The grain chute that others believed carried only emptiness became the passage through which hope returned to Ash Hollow, and every child growing up beneath its shadow learned that forgotten things sometimes wait patiently until forgotten people are ready to discover them. Whenever evening sunlight painted the valley gold, neighbors would see Eliza locking the great wooden doors with the same brass key that had opened the hidden chamber years before, and they understood the true beginning had never been hidden beneath the floor at all. It had been waiting inside the heart of someone the world had underestimated. Thank you for spending this journey with us through the quiet roads and weathered fields of the frontier. If Eliza's story stayed with you, we'd love to hear from you in the comments and know where you're watching from. What is a time you found value in something everyone else had already written off? Stories like these remind us that hope often arrives dressed in ordinary clothes, waiting for someone willing to look a little closer. If you enjoy heartfelt frontier tales of resilience, mystery, and second chances, be sure to subscribe to Berry Tales, so you never miss another journey. Until next time, stay close.